All right, well, that's it for club business. And now to introduce our speaker is Jane Nishita, leader of CenturyLink's outreach program. Jane, come on up.
Thank you, Cindy. I can see everybody now. So is Rotarian Don Kraft at our meeting today? Yes? Great. Because I would like you to keep me honest as I quote you. In one of Don Kraft's 4 Bits presentations, he recounted our history of being the 4th oldest Rotary Club in the world. We are 110 years old this year. Today, we will get to hear from publisher Frank Blethen, whose family-owned business called the Seattle Times is 121 years old. Both our Rotary and the Seattle Times have parallel experience of over 100 years of serving the community of Greater Seattle. In fact, I have a story to share where our organizations have intersected in a significant way in our past. In 1985, then Rotarian Frank Blethen became program chair for the Rotary Club when suddenly, recently retired Seattle Times Rotarian and program chair Jerry Pennington passed away in a boating accident. Don Kraft would remind us that 1985 was when the Rotary was contemplating adding women to our rosters. Mr. Blethen, who had succeeded Mr. Pennington as Seattle Times publisher, conditionally accepted the position of Rotary program chair. Frank said that he would vacate the chair spot and Rotary altogether if Seattle 4 did not accept women within 6 months. We all can speculate whether Mr. Blethen's ultimatum was a driving force, but 3 months later, women were invited in. Frank Blethen is publisher of the Seattle Times / SeattleTimes.com, the 2nd largest newspaper website on the West Coast. The Times has won 10 Pulitzer Prizes and most recently was awarded the 2015 Pulitzer Prize for breaking news reporting. It could not be more timely for us to hear from a local voice in the media, an independent voice based on high standards in journalism with a 100-year-plus Seattle roots. Let's give, please, a big Rotarian welcome to publisher Frank Blethen.
Well, thank you, Jane. And I think she almost got it right, Dawn, because there were some others that were putting pressure on Rotary at the same time. So.
We're only 109 years old.
Okay, she had 2 errors. So as a Rotarian alumnus of 3 different clubs, Walla Walla, the University District, and downtown, it really does give me special pleasure to speak to you here today. It's been sort of old homecoming week seeing people like Dawn I haven't seen in years. Noted journalist Walter Cronkite once said, "Freedom of the press is not just important to democracy, it is democracy." Freedom of the press is not just important to democracy, it is democracy. Today, America's once robust free press is on life support, but not here in Seattle. In these tumultuous times, we still have here in Seattle one of the few local, independent journalism and community-based newspapers left in America. And, as was noted, We're about, I guess not quite noted, but we're about to celebrate a new anniversary, our 122nd stewardship anniversary next month. The timing is fitting as we emerge from a decade of technological disruption, our financial system collapse, and the Great Recession. We are emerging as a new industry model, tooled for the next decade and tooled for continuous innovation and evolution. We've dubbed ourselves the 121-year-old startup company. There have been many ups and downs for the Seattle Times through its 12-plus decades. Throughout it all, the multiple generations of the Blethen family have built a rich history of meeting those challenges and of evolving the business model to adapt to the new circumstances. Always based on a foundation of three things: strong, relevant local content, robust public service, and an excellent journalism. Our fiercely independent stewardship culture, our willingness to take risk, our penchant for change and innovation, all are traits which reflect this wonderful corner of the world we all call home. To give you a national perspective of how we are seen, I refer to Stanford professor James Hamilton's most recent book, Democracy Detectives: The Economics of Investigative Journalism. In his book, Hamilton reported on an exhaustive study of newspaper journalism from 1918 through 2013. He ranked the Seattle Times 5th in the nation over that period, trailing only the Washington Post, New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, and the LA Times, all newspapers with significantly more resources. But I wouldn't be here talking to you today if not for two important things. First is our family stewardship mission and our family values through 5 generations, connecting back to our founder, Alden Blethen, in 1896. And second, the remarkable community support for the Seattle Times and a free press. As the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. Nowhere is this more true in the country than in the newspaper and journalism world. Because of your support and our broader community's support, our community enjoys a level and quality of journalism and public service which is second to none in the country today. Here is some background on our current reach and impact. We are the largest local private metro newspaper in the West Coast and Rocky Mountains. We have the largest audience in our history, 1.8 million adults. We have the second largest paid print circulation on the West Coast, which Jane already noted. For regional metros, we have the 3rd highest number of paid digital subscriptions in the country. Subscription revenue, print plus digital, is now our largest revenue stream. Our audience is by far the best in the market, and we reach all the right people, especially shoppers and voters. 65% of people with household income of $150,000 or more read the Times. The average household income of our print readers is $74,900. The average household income of our digital readers is actually higher at $86,200. 71% of registered voters read the Seattle Times. During election season, the digital traffic to our opinion section, especially endorsements, is outstanding. One of the great newspaper myths is that we're not reaching younger audiences. Fact is, our largest single segment, 399,200 people, are millennials 25 to 39 years old. These millennials represent our largest group of online users also, with half of them consuming our content in both print and multiple digital formats. In this graphic, we've ranked our audience by segment size, and you can see at the smallest segment, 18 to 24-year-olds, we still have a 43% penetration. In 2013, we were one of the first newspapers to implement a digital subscription paywall. Since then, we have been continually enhancing our paywall technology for customer experience, for marketing, and to develop new analytic tools to measure how specific content drives subscriptions. We've grown paid digital subscribers from 0 to 36,000, and digital subscription revenue from 0 to $6 million. Significantly, as digital grows, our print subscription revenue remains very healthy and grew by 2.5% last year. Print alone is now generating over $60 million annually. Transformation 2030 is our dynamic business model, which includes a 13-year audience transformation process. This is our roadmap for building our relationship and loyalty from millennials and Gen Xers as these generations replace matures and boomers. This transformation process has three main elements. We determine the news and information needs and wants of Gen Xers and millennials. Then we align each audience segment with their preferred content and preferred delivery platforms. And we have to ensure that we are striking the right balance between content serving boomers and matures with the content serving millennials and Gen Xers. For the rest of my talk, I want to share more about what is our most innovative and unusual innovation during this period, and that is the community funding of public service journalism. For all of our innovation, nothing has more benefit to the community than this. It's an innovation which has resulted in the robust local journalism that I mentioned a few minutes ago. We are now generating more than $2 million annually for public service journalism and engagement. The result is high impact, high interest content, which our community so richly deserves. The major projects to date are the Greater Good Campaign, Education Lab, Livewire, Traffic Lab, Project Homeless, and coming soon, the Free Press Watchdog Lab. For all of our labs and projects, actual content and story selection remain strictly under the control of our editors. But that said, we maintain a dialogue with the funders, and they have pushed us to adopt new ways of storytelling. Of note are the pioneering of a new journalistic technique now being studied by newspapers across the country, solutions journalism, and also are experimenting with public engagement, finding ways large and small to create events and conversations with people in the community. A brief chronology and evolution of this public service journalism. Coming out of the 2008 financial crash and into the Great Recession, we, like most other newspapers and businesses, found ourselves in a resource-starved environment. Adding to our overall economic woes was the structural erosion of traditional newspaper advertising, a revenue stream which had been the primary funder of newspaper and media journalism for more than 50 years. Our choice was to join the rest of the country and the rest of our industry with deep content cuts and severe layoffs, actions which would have jeopardized our future and jeopardized the future of independent local journalism in Seattle. The Blethen family, myself and my cousins, we made two decisions. First, we were going to double down on our commitment to be a catalyst for reforming the state's public education system, something I've talked to this club about before. Second, we began to experiment with raising community funds to support journalism. Our first effort in 2011 was the Greater Good Campaign to stop the defunding of higher education. We created a fact-based newspaper and digital campaign which focused on two things. One, the legislature's 10-year-long, egregious annual defunding of our higher education system. Defunding which resulted in us being having the second lowest college access in the entire United States. Second, highlighting the benefit and the great return on investment from each dollar spent on a higher education. We had two learns from Greater Good, both pleasant surprises. It was fairly easy to raise the funds, and the program was wildly successful in its first year when the legislature stopped the defunding for the first time in almost a decade. The greater good success emboldened us to approach the Gates Foundation to invest in a new concept, the creation of a journalism education lab, a lab which would provide an unprecedented level of education coverage and analysis and solutions. The positive impact of EdLab has truly been extraordinary, a catalyst for important reforms in our public education system. It also helped change and expand the dialogue to now include early learning, wraparound services, and post-secondary access. It was key to elevating community awareness, which eventually led to the legislature complying with the state's constitutional mandate to fully fund K-12. The Gates Foundation was a real breakthrough for us. It gave us credibility both within the greater Seattle community and with foundations from outside the state. Emboldened by these two efforts, we targeted one of the most intractable and controversial issues for our next lab, traffic. Traffic Lab has been very successful from a readership and an audience engagement standpoint, and it has clearly caught the attention of public officials and travel-related agency. Going into our second year now, expect to see more solutions and watchdog storytelling. The most recent startup in our public service journalism family is the 6-month-old project Homeless. This was also a major breakthrough, as it was the first journalism lab proposed to us directly from the community. The initial impact has been very encouraging, like Traffic Lab, has policymakers' attention and very strong reader engagement. We actually now have a backlog of community requests for new labs and projects from a very diverse mix of the community. Next up is our most audacious community-funded project yet, the Seattle Times Press Watchdog Fund. That's sort of a working title. We hope for something more elegant. Investigative reporting is the most popular and most impactful content that we produce, but it's also the most expensive and the most time-consuming journalism, which is one of the reasons there's so little of it left across the country. We're in the early phases of holding small information and feedback meetings with potential lead investors. The Watchdog concept is a $2 million fund which would support a $1 million a year budget for a watchdog staff of 15 to 20. This would be the largest staff outside DC and New York. In summer, we hope this recap of our 8-year journey gives you an appreciation for why the Seattle Times is being recognized as an innovative new model for the future. Our family has been deeply committed for 122 years and 5 generations to both this community and to journalistic stewardship. We will not allow your watchdog to become a lapdog. We are proud of what we have done, but we know we can't do it without you. So in closing, how can you help? First and foremost, subscribe. Next, if you're not already one of our agency partners, explore what it means for us to be a full-service digital agency and how we can uniquely now leverage our combination of print and digital. Next, if you or any of your associates or friends are interested in learning more about or investing in any of our labs for public service journalism, please let me know. Finally, whenever you get the opportunity, please show your appreciation to the funders we do have for public service journalism. They are truly making this a unique and better community. With that, I think we're going to move into questions. And I think we have all the funders up there. Jane, protocol?
Hello, I'm David Brenner, and I've been a 34-year subscriber to the Times since I moved here to Seattle, and I love your newspaper. You know, since Tim Burgess' retirement from the city council, I felt like Danny Westneat is the last rational man with a microphone in Seattle. And I'm wondering, with all those millennial subscribers, whether you have another Danny Westneat in the millennial category who's going to step up and be the voice for that group.
You know, it's a great question. First of all, thank you for your support and your subscription. I've not quite heard anybody use Danny and rational in the same sentence before, but that's a whole nother matter. You know, Danny's doing a great job, you know, touching nerves that need to be touched. It's been amazing, you know, in my 33 years as publisher of this paper, whether it's good times or bad times, it's been amazing how we attract and grow really good journalists in our environment. And in today's environment, there are not a lot of places like us left, so we don't have much trouble recruiting journalists, other than the cost of living. That's a little bit of a problem, but it's amazing once you create that culture, once you create that reputation, and now the reputation that we're creating for our innovation. So I don't know who it is yet, but I'm sure you will, you know, keep subscribing for 10 years, you'll see the next rational Westneat.
Hi, Frank. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the Seattle Times. Since I retired, it's the best part of my morning to have coffee and read the paper. So, this is more of a business leadership question. You're now on your 5th generation, I think you said, of ownership of the Times. How does the Times think about succession planning as you look down the road, say, another 30 years?
Well, for us, succession family is perpetuating family stewardship. I mean, that's it. The thing we have behind it is probably some of the most elegant bylaws that any family holding company has in the country, in any business. They were started in the 1950s by the 3rd generation. They were significantly enhanced by myself and my cousins when we first took control in 1985. They anticipate multi-generation successions. They anticipate having a family governance set up which is best practices and which it's not only best practices, but the whole focus is on stewardship and mission and public service and not any kind of short-term return. We know we have to make a profit in some fashion if we're going to do our public service, but that's not what the focus is. And we inculcate the next generations as they come up. And we also, you know, part and parcel of that are the key non-family members who play roles in every generation. And in every generation, you can identify a couple of key family members and 2 or 3 key non-family members. In the last one, you know, my predecessor, Jerry Pennington, of course, you know, was the epitome of the outsider who helped perpetuate the family business. So I'm very confident as long as we keep bringing in non-family members, like many of them down at the table here, and as long as we keep nurturing the family, you know, the bylaws are pretty clear. This is a stewardship, and that's the way it's going to be perpetuated. Thank you. Oh.
Hi, thank you. I learned some fascinating facts today. The Watchdog Project sounds really interesting. Can you talk more about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Sharon, would you stand for a minute? Sharon Chan is our Vice President of Innovation, Product, and Development. So she got a pretty big plate from technology to fundraising. She comes out of the newsroom. But Sharon works with me very closely on this. And the thing we get the most requests for is watchdog journalism and spotlight journalism. And as I said, it's the most challenging and expensive. So, you know, we just decided this was going to be pretty audacious, but let's see if we can really build something here which would really maximize all of our labs, you know, because a lot of the content you'd get out of the Watchdog lab are going to be working with or leveraging what we get out of the other labs. So we've been working with some people from the Center for Public Integrity, which is a $10 million nonprofit journalism organization out of San Francisco, and some people from public radio to sort of replicate what they're doing. So the idea is to try to create some lead investors to make sure you can get the project going, but then we want to expand the circle so that we can get smaller donors in and having them feel like, you know, more and more community ownership and participation in what we're doing. And I have to put a footnote on that. You know, we've got all these subscribers out there, and we want to stay cognizant of the fact that, you know, they are paying us 60-some million, well, when you count digital, $66 million a year. So no, we don't have any supporters more important than them, and we don't want to forget that they're helping make that journalism possible. So, you know, we're learning as we go, but we want to develop some techniques to make sure they can be engaged too. So, did I miss anything, Sharon? Nope.
Next question from Jim Moore to your right in the back.
Thank you for your presentation and such a good long family history. I've kind of a geometric question, which is how has the format of the paper changed over time? Is that related to periodic rebrandings, basically? And what about printing challenges and that technology? How have you dealt with that along with distribution?
Well, the formats, you know, have a tendency to evolve over time. You know, different kinds of design, different times. But you know, as long as we have the press capacity we have today, formatting's, you know, not a big problem. We're actually looking at some streamlining of formatting now. That you might even see some of it before the year is over. But anything we do is always designed for understanding who our audiences are and those readership needs. I mean, one of the challenges we have now, which I was touching on, was we know that we've got people that read us religiously on digital, and it's not just the website. We've got, like, you know, 12 or 13 different digital products now, and different people will use different ones of them. So we've got to distribute digital content on multiple platforms. At the same time, we have to figure out, you know, how are we serving the print reader. And you really do that, trying to get the balance between the younger readers, which are becoming the larger audience, and the older readers, which will become the smaller audience. Trying to make sure you're getting that balance, especially in the print. So it's not just for one and the other, but you can get the mix. It's tricky, but it's something we're working on. Print distribution is really interesting because that may be our biggest single challenge right now. In this economy, $15 an hour, it is really hard to get carriers. And you know, we've guaranteed 5:30 a.m. delivery Monday through Friday ever since we went AM in 2000. And we've always been noted for the best print service in the country. It's really a challenge. It's just happening all over the country, but it's worse here with some of our economics. And on printing, you know, the printing technology is fine. You know, we built a state-of-the-art plant in the early 1990s, and it's still viable today. The big distribution issues now are digital in all these products. We actually now have, somebody's going to correct me from the Times, but I believe it's 9 digital newsletters every week. One every day of the week in the morning, one Friday evening. We have a food and drinks, we have a sports, and we just started something else. We have a Pacific magazine. And it's interesting because all of them get somewhat different audiences. The Friday evening newsletter started when we realized that a significant portion of the people who got the Friday morning newsletter, and they're big numbers, 30 and 40,000 sometimes, that they were not opening it until between 6 and midnight. So we started looking at that group, and there was a tendency that they were millennial males. So we thought, okay, let's put a newsletter out there. So look at the newsletter one morning and one evening on Friday. You'll see some differences in them, but so that's where our real tailoring is starting to come.
Final question back here, Frank.
So I remember the 1960s. I still have my beard, definitely a product of that era. But I've never seen an assault on the free press as I've seen today in what's happening on the national scene in terms of some of the comments we get from our leadership in Washington, D.C. You know, as a leader of the free press here in this region and really someone who's been in this business for a long time, what's your take on all that?
Well, my take on it is people are focusing on the wrong thing. You know, we got this guy that's part of his shtick and part of his strategy to beat up on the media. But the real problem there is the divided country we have and the fault lines we have. And one of those fault lines is, when I talk about free press being on life support, one of the biggest fault lines is the control of media today. Facebook, Google, it's obscene what they get to do with our content and everybody else. It's obscene that they're selling ads to the Russians and undermining our elections. It's obscene that they get, the government has subsidized them with a free internet. Well, they steal our content, and then we have to pay for our own printing and distribution. Yeah, we can use the internet at no cost too, except that then they have now tied it all up, so we have to go through them, and they're the only ones that profit off it. So, you know, my message is people need to understand how dangerous the control and the lack of government, you know, oversight is of the internet today. You know, the whole idea of a free press, the whole reason that Congress created the U.S. Post Office was the ubiquitous distribution of information. But you know, the idea was there'd be a system of regional newspapers and a few national ones, and collectively the country would get, you know, to get the kind of information they needed, and that would build community and self-government. A lot of that's not happening around America today, because this local media system, regional media system, is pretty much been compromised. So that's the biggest issue, I think. It frustrates me that people get so fixated on Trump instead of getting fixated on that and on the other fault lines in America. Broken free press, broken public education are the two biggest threats to the continuation of our democracy. With that, I should sit down.